This is going to be an interesting talk. Henry Taylor B-side is going to be at the Whitney in October. This exhibition started out in Los Angeles and coming to the Whitney. So I'll just read you this blurb that they gave us from the museum. Henry Taylor B-side is the first exhibition to survey his career. Henry Taylor, born in 1958, based in Los Angeles, included are paintings, drawings, sculpture, and installations. This retrospective celebrates the artist widely appreciated. This artist widely appreciated for his unique aesthetic, social vision, and freewheeling experimentation. Taylor's figurative work, populated by friends, relatives, strangers on the street, athletes, politicians, and entertainers, showcases an imagination that encompasses multiple worlds. Informed by experience, his work conveys fundamental empathy through close examination and sharp social criticism. There are over 150 works in the show from the late 80s to the present. Though Taylor is renowned for his portraiture, his work encompasses many genres and moves through influences. Within this stylistic diversity, Taylor's attention to Black Americans and various conditions of Black America comes into focus in ways that are deep feeling, witty, joyful, and concerned. And what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to do a zoom in on this piece so you can actually see the paint application on this. And this is a fairly, let's see, I want to double check the size on this. Yeah, it's 73 by 74 inches. So this is a very, very large painting. And you can see the juicy paint, the really vigorous paint application, the brushwork. This is a hallmark of his work. And you'll see a lot more of it. But, you know, this is really on the scale of someone like Alex Katz when he was doing those large-scale portrait heads, but a very different focus. You know, he paints a lot of his family and friends. It's not the cool high society types that you get in Alex Katz. So let's see. Okay. Organized thematically, Henry Taylor B-side highlights several of the artist's major subjects, among them his family members, artistic community, street scenes from Los Angeles and beyond, icons of politics and the music world, including portraits of Eldridge Cleaver, Barack and Michelle Obama, and Jay-Z, and often wrenching encounters with racism, policing, and American history. In addition to paintings, the exhibition will include selections of Taylor's assemblage sculptures, rarely seen early drawings of patients at Camarillo State Mental Hospital, where the artist worked while he was a student at California Institute for Arts in the early 90s, and a large grouping of his painted objects, pointed observations rendered on recycled cigarette packages, cereal boxes and other everyday supports, crates, suitcases, anything that he came across. He picked up stuff on. He would pick up stuff on the street and paint on it. So let's see. All right, I'm going to do a quick bio thing. He was raised in Oxnard, California. Took classes as a boy at Oxnard College with James Jarvis, who mentored him. And I'll show some images a little bit later on of his work. One of Henry's brothers was a founding member of the Ventura County chapter of the Black Panthers. Henry worked as a psychiatric tech, handing out meds and helping the doctors communicate with the patients at Camarillo State Mental Hospital. So he did that for 10 years. While working there, he attended Cal Arts and got his BFA in 1995. The largest output of his work is portraiture of family, friends, street people, waitresses, the rich and famous, and sports stars, you know, basically painting directly from sitters or painting from photographs or painting from newspaper clippings. There's a combination of things that he used. Let's see. All right, so I'm gonna push forward, and here is a shot of one of the installations in the show, so you get a sense of the scale. And this, I think it's a bench, but it's like imitation Velveeta cheese, this block that's in the middle of the gallery. Pretty funny. So, you know, you get the idea that these are fairly substantial size pieces. They're most of them, you know, that that portrait was at least 74 inches tall. So these other pieces are, some of them are bigger than that. Okay, and so when he was working at the hospital, he would do these drawings of the inmates. They were subject for an early series of these drawings. He's a good draftsman. He's really able to, you know, use the tools to capture the essence of these people, you know. And she traveled the universe. Well, she's in a psychiatric hospital. I guess that's the right place to be. Okay, and then there's Alice Neal, and her kind of awkward, raw painting technique of street characters and friends and acquaintances is really kind of a model. These paintings were painted in the 50s, so I know that, you know, Taylor is quite familiar. He is well read, knows his art history, so he would have been very familiar with Alice Neal's work. Okay, now we're going to move on to resting, and this is one of his, I would call it, this is mature style for Henry Taylor. And at first glance, it's just relaxing people. Then you start to really plug in and notice some things about what's going on in this painting. It took me a while to get it. You know, notice her eyes. That's one of the first things, that kind of wary quality that's in those eyes. She's a bit cautious, shall we say. Then as you look at this piece, what are they leaning on? Is this a couch that they're leaning on? Well, at first that's what I thought it was, but then is that what's going on behind them? Is that a pillow? Is that a sleeping person? I noticed that there's a head sticking out on the left, and there's fingers, like this person's leaning on their hand. So is this a bed with a person in it? And you know, the next question that came to me was, what's going on outside the window? Or is it a window? What's going on here? I mean, are those trees that are behind them, are they actually on some kind of a bed that's out on a field? You know, these are all questions. I'm not sure what's going on here. And this is all part of what Henry's work is about, this ambiguity. So, you know, we're looking at this thing, and then what's going on with that pink wall off in the distance, this institutional wall, prison wall, and scrawled on that wall, and I don't know if you can really make it out. I'll try and close in on it, but it's a little blurry. But it says, warning shots are not required. And this team of people that are out here seem to be, maybe they're inmates, we don't know what's going on with that. So this painting, which at first appeared to be a very simple kind of lumpy interior double portrait, takes on a very ambiguous multi-level meaning. By the way, California. You know, this is essentially the layering that goes on with Henry Taylor's work, which makes it very intriguing. Aside from the fact that he's like luscious with this paint, and very abstracted, you know, patches and all that. So we're gonna move on. Okay, and speaking of abstracted patches, so James Jarvis was his teacher. He's the image off on the left. He did a lot of figurative work. There was the Bay Area figurative painters. They actually, you know, spread out all over California. So there was a figurative movement in the late 50s, early 60s that was very abstracted. They would move the figure around a lot and leave the process very raw, so you could actually kind of see that on the surface when they were finished with the painting. You know, Richard Diebenkorn is one of the most famous of that group. I'm gonna move us on. Actually, one of the things that I want to say is Diebenkorn looked long and hard at Matisse, and that whole business of allowing the underpainting, the previous states of the painting to show through the layers. It, you know, it's what they call penimento, when you can see the underlayers of the painting and they affect how you see the painting. It adds a depth and richness to the surface. So Matisse was one of the guys that kind of, you know, really worked with this a lot in modernism. So I pulled up this piece, and very broad, very abstracted, but you can see the brushwork and the scraping and the moving around of the figure, you can also see, you know, where the underpainting is still showing through, and he uses that as part of the energy of the painting, as part of the abstract quality of the painting. And let's see, I actually am gonna zoom in a little bit here so that we can get a look at some of this. So you can see underneath the surface, you can see the remnants of the painting that was there. When you see the painting in person, the energy of that stuff underneath the surface is really part of it. And you know, the scraping and scratching and scruffing around to actually end up with the composition that he kind of abandons or leaves it there. Combination of abstract shapes, of patterning, of all of that. This is the meat of a certain period in Matisse's work. And so we come back to our friend Taylor. Some of his pieces have this half-finished narrative, this these kind of incomplete thoughts, and he just moves on and leaves them there. So it's kind of that improvisational shifting, you know, different ideas on the surface, and he just kind of allows them to be there and leaves it, walks away, walks on, moves on, says what he has to say and leaves it there. I put a spell on you. So, you know, the blues is there. And his smaller scale pieces, always painting, consistently, constantly working. The guy is, you know, basically paint on anything. These are painted on detergent boxes and painted over an old canvas right onto the frame. Different cultural elements, you know, the Armani suit. So he's very freewheeling. He's very much inclusive. He's very much taking in what he's experiencing and putting it on with very thick impastos, very thick paint. We're gonna come in here and take. Oh, well, it's a little blurry, but let's see what this one's like. Oh yeah, this is nice. This gives you some really beautiful sense of the chunky quality of the paint. Okay. And it reminded me of Buford Delaney and that kind of intensity that Buford endowed his pieces with. Again, the texture, you know, Taylor is definitely familiar with Delaney's work, and this is James Baldwin, who was actually Delaney's lover. Delaney lived a lot of his time in France, although he came back and forth to America. And you can definitely see, you know, the eye thing in Taylor and the eye thing going on with Delaney. And then there's Jacob Lawrence and Romer Bearden, and that kind of cubistic multi-image, dealing with the cultural narrative, dealing with the layering of image. you know, there's a kind of storytelling that's going on here, and we can't quite make out what that story is, but we get that there's a underlying narrative that's intriguing. So again, with Bearden, it's collage. Jacob Lawrence, for the most part, was straight gouache painting. And these were really people that Taylor looked to for in his development and for his imagery. Okay. So the G-rated piece, really kind of interesting. Like, what's she doing with the bra on the outside of the shirt? I don't know. And there's this business of the patchwork, the kind of patchwork quilts. These this whole series of little portraits at the bottom. Are they mug shots? What's going on here? Again, layering, you know, the sports references, life on the street, you know, really a lot of different things kind of condensed onto the surface of the painting. And then in the Wheatgret piece, I'm really not familiar with the story. I could have done a little bit more research and found out a little bit more about it, but I thought it was an interesting piece with the cutout letters. You know, there's a whole thing going on with the combination of letters, of notes, of words mixed with images in Henry's work that I find really intriguing. Okay. And Trail is another really interesting piece. Now, if you look at this painting, up in the top, there's a portrait of Dylan. So Bob Dylan actually was somebody that I've heard Henry Taylor mention a number of times as someone that he really admired, listened to, and you know, there's songs like The Lonesome Tale of Hattie Carroll, which is early Dylan song back in the I guess it was in the early 60s that he did that one, which is really a song about a woman a black woman who worked for a white man who was murdered, and the white man was let off with 6 months jail time. You know, and then there's the song about Hurricane that Dylan did. These were all things that you know, that I've heard Taylor mention as things which he really feels an affinity for with Dylan. And then you've got this composite painting with obviously with policemen and with, you know, mysterious characters, half concealed, half out in the open. Hands up, what's going on? We don't know. A lot of things happening here. Again, patchy, you know, this very kind of abstract quality to these paintings, and he just allows it all to happen. And the painting on the right, I don't have the name of it, but it was from 2007, and you see the kind of the police car, and then there's the hand gesture there, the solidarity. And as I said, his brother was one of the founders of the Ventura County Black Panthers. So this portrait of Huey Newton from 2007, I understand from one of the talks that I heard, Henry tried to join the Black Panthers, but from what I got, he wasn't up for following the structure, and they decided that he didn't belong with them. But the scale of this painting, again, it's 95 by 76 inches, so it's a good size piece. And again, the integration of the words and the image. Okay. Yeah, mumbo jumbo justice, huh? Syllable times rhythm equals mumbo jumbo. So, you know, I look at this and it's, you know, there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of underlying narrative, and I've read some of the things that are going on with it, but you know, the piece is really an enigmatic sort of portrait. Those eyes. Henry can paint. Okay. William Johnson, again, is a kind of member of the Harlem Renaissance, went to Europe, and really delved into the modernist realm, and you know, brought that back and applied it to you know, the social equity issues. So, you know, when I look at this piece, I see, you know, this kind of jumble of figures in the chain gang, and it really does kind of remind me of that patchy element in Henry's work. Okay, and the Screaming Head, 1999. This piece really, it's using a kind of cartoon-like imagery, kind of surrealist. You know, it's like the underground comics from the 60s, and you know, basically the social political commentaries. Very powerful piece in its own way. Very funny, very weird, and reminds me of Philip Guston, picking up on that social political commentary. And again, here's Philip Guston, you know, riding around. You know, he did this whole series of Klansmen riding around in cars and doing various things. And rather than just pointing the finger out, you know, here he is, the studio. He's in the studio painting a self-portrait, puffing away on a stogie. again, we're going to go back to Bob Dylan. Fearing not, I become the enemy in the instant that I preached. But I was so much older then. I'm younger than that now. So, you know, one of the things that Gustin is saying is we all have this capability inside of us, and so I wanted to bring that out. And this again would be someone who Taylor would be very familiar with, and gained a certain kind of permission to go his way from looking at this work. This is a show that took place at the Studio Museum, and you know, basically, I didn't get to see this show in 2007, but looks like it was a wonderful show. Okay. From the Congo to the capital and black again. Taylor's knowledge of art history and injecting black bodies into that lily white story with a rather dark humor. So he takes the African masks, which Picasso used as his inspiration for Le Demoiselle Guyon, and gives them back to the black face, gives them back to the place that they came from. The other really funny thing about this Taylor piece is the only place where a white arm shows up is reaching around to grope this naked black woman. Boy, is he something. Okay. And on the right is Marcel Duchamp, and Henry did his version of Nude Descending a Staircase, and gave his nod to Duchamp. Okay. Not much needs to be said here, but watch your back. And then that was then. So large scale pieces. I mean, that was then is 95 by 75 inches. It's a very big piece. Let me see what I can do with this. Okay, we'll come in and take a little closer look at the paint application. Some of it's thick, some of it's really thin. He allows the drips to happen. Let it go. And again, that integration of word and image. Unless I'm mistaken, the sitter on the left is Dizzy Gillespie's son or grandson, I can't remember, but the great jazz player. And he supposedly is a Buddhist, so hence the beads. Again, I'm going to close in on him because Beautiful paint. Henry can really put the paint on. You know, this that subtle background in this one is really interesting too. And another wrong. Now this piece is intense. The times, they changing fast enough. Taylor sees in the round. He sees most acutely the things from which we may wish to turn away. Things like Orlando Castile bleeding out in the driver's seat of a car. For Taylor, this is an outrage from the newspapers, becomes a pieta. Driven by an intimacy based not on actual acquaintance, but rather on personal identification. And this identification must be intense. His own grandfather, Ardmore Taylor, a horse trainer from East Texas, was ambushed, shot, and killed back in 1933. I know Taylor saw his father being rousted by police, you know, beat up actually outside his house when he was a kid. Okay. And this is another one, you know, really funny business going on here. At first, you see this guy, big smile, hands, and then you start to look at it. There's a speedometer there. This car is going 98 miles an hour straight at him. And if you look on his shirt, it says Superman. And again, you know, the paint, he just lathers the stuff on there. It's amazing. Very, very, very interesting stuff. The piece on the left is enormous. This is 75 by 126, so it's over 10 feet tall. It's really monumental. And I will zoom in on her for the moment and just see what we got here. Really amazing. Everybody's mama. Okay. And he did, you know, a lot of really, you know, interesting pieces juxtaposing, you know, sports heroes in very strange situations. I mean, what's going on with this? Again, juxtaposing a hopscotch thing, picket fence, stairway. He's out on the street doing baskets, but you know, and there's this institution is at an arena behind us. Okay. Again, you know, Henry does this thing of like condensing a lot of different pieces of information into one piece. You know, this high jump business. You know, sports heroes on the street. Tuskegee. and jumping over these kind of abstracted houses. It's really interesting stuff. I mean, it's fascinating and very big. Again, 76 by 113 inches. I haven't seen these paintings in person, and I can't wait to see them, because the quality of the paint is just going to be something to behold. Again, kind of a really wacky, hyena on the street. Santa Claus flying off into the over the moon, and this guy's in LA with snowballs. What's going on here? And this piece gets to some pretty interesting stuff. Cecily and Miles. It's a very telling image. As a photograph, it's a very telling image. The fact that Taylor chose it and focused in on it and recontextualized the piece. Miles is there with his arms crossed, with the dark glasses, very, holding in, and Cecily holding his sleeve, with a very protective look. But then there's this kind of shrinking of time to fit the storyline. What's the name of this painting? Cecily and Miles Visit the Obamas. So, it's a very different time. It's a very different time. Things change and stay the same. Okay. And back and forth, he's constantly painting, these kind of heroic figures. Andrea Motley Crabtree was the first female deep sea diver, first female Black deep sea diver. And then there's Too Sweet, Guy on the Street, beautifully painted. I mean, really interesting. I'm going to go in on this. Well, it's kind of blurry, but you get the idea. The hand gesture. Okay. And this is one of his gallery shows. So what he did was bring in dirt onto the gallery floor and set up these kind of installation pieces with kind of graffiti all over them, and kind of a street person tent set up in the middle of the gallery. Found objects brought in, and these plastic bags full of stuff, and then his paintings on the walls. Kind of leveling the ivory tower of the gallery, leveling the cultural elite. This was at Bloom and Poe, the gallery that worked with him for, I guess they worked together for about 10 years. I think they're still working together, though he's been picked up by another really big gallery in New York at this point, New York and Europe. Okay. So the hair and the lamp in this chorus chorus place, really interesting. Stay with your plan. And again, the sports business, this where's Tiger? And if you look, think in the background, it's all black caddies. So the barbershop as community center. This has been played out with Taylor and with Kerry James Marshall. Very different approaches. Marshall, you know, the business, there's certain things which they have as similarities, you know, the bone to pick with the cultural lack in museum presentations. The presence of black faces in those settings were few and far between when these two guys were coming up. It's changed a great deal now, and there's a lot of black representation that's happening in museums, but it's kind of like playing catch up for hundreds of years. Where Marshall's sharp intellect and crisp technical style brilliantly addresses these issues with kind of a withering sense of humor. You know, de style is hearkening back to Gustav Klimt and that movement in Austria. And I did Hudler a few weeks ago, where I talked about the style actually, and you know, these kind of stylizations of the hairdos on these characters in this barbershop, really funny. And then we have Taylor, much more visceral, much more abstracted, disjointed, a sly, dark humor, addressing the very same issues in a earthy way, you know, dragging dirt into the gallery. Okay. And, you know, from straightforward street portraits to monumental scale compositions that integrate multiple narratives and leave us scratching our heads trying to figure out where the hell we are. He just comes up with these quizzes that are really interesting to decipher. Again, 82 by 144 inches. That piece is over 10 feet wide. You're talking 12 feet. These images are really fresh. They're unpredictable. The composite image is still fresh and really compelling. You're trying to figure out what the heck is going on and what the story is here. And again, you know, Chris, this just straightforward, you know, wonderful portrait. I haven't spent a whole lot of time addressing his sculpture and assemblage pieces. Much of it is assembled from found objects on the street, you know, this untitled running man, blending with nature, on the run, through the woods, part of the family tree. I don't know. It's a lot of stuff. it's a lot of stuff in there. And I'm not even going to try and deal with the basketballs and the sailing ship. Okay, so this was a piece that Henry did in 2017 at the same, I think he was having a show at PS1, and this was off the High Line. And it's again, large scale, billboard size piece in this case. There are a number of talks on YouTube Henry Taylor and his friends discuss, and from the Museum of Contemporary Art in LA. That's a really interesting talk. It's exasperating. It's almost as exasperating as his paintings in certain ways, because Henry was talking into the microphone and then would take the microphone away, and you'd hear him mumbling, and then he'd take the thing back up and he'd say something brilliant, and then he'd go off into mumbling. And it's so much like his paintings. I was laughing the whole time. Very interesting stuff, fascinating work. In 2 weeks, it's not listed on the calendar yet, but I am going to be doing a talk on Giacometti and another sculptor that are both being presented in a small show at the Museum of Modern Art, but I'm going to take this opportunity to dive into Giacometti a bit. So that's it for this. Yes.
Okay. Larry, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.